can't just come into OTAs and expect that we're going to be a great team. So to me, that indicates like maybe there was a bit of overconfidence during the off season. I also heard a lot of we need to make year 2 with Kirk Cousins one where we're on the same page with him. Diggs and Thielen both sort of indicated that there are times where we weren't on the same page necessarily, and we saw that with the frustration with Thielen in the final game where he and Cousins were going at it. And, I thought it was kind of funny that on Monday, Thielen basically said, yeah, I knew that exchange as it was going on was going to be all over TV and that you guys would love it. And, there was quite a bit made of it, but deservedly so when you have heated arguments after what was pretty clearly a miscommunication, whether they want to admit it or not. It was a product of not having enough time, really, is the way it was explained. That, Cousins thought that Thielen was going to cut off his route one way. Thielen wanted, to go for the big shot down the field, and Cousins just didn't have the time to let that develop. So I don't really place blame on either one of them, but those sort of things I think are things that can get ironed out over the, spending more time together. So that was one thing that I took away from the locker room. The other thing, Latavius Murray is a free agent. And, he kind of said, I want to be able to have a chance to start in this league. Now I'll throw it to you, but I don't necessarily see Latavius Murray as being a clear-cut number one back on any team in this league.
No, I really like him. I actually like him exactly in the role he's in now. He can be a goal line back. He can be a change of pace back. He can be somebody who rests your starter. If your starter's hurt, he can give you a good, solid game. But he's not somebody you really want to build your game plan around like Dalvin Cook is. There's just a talent gap. So I like everything about Murray, but I don't think he's a starting running back on a good team. I think he's exactly what he is being used as now. I wouldn't blame him for wanting more money, wanting more carries. I mean, NFL careers are short. I don't begrudge him his sentiments at all. I just don't know that another team's going to look at it and say, let's give Latavius Murray a lot of money to be our feature back.
Yeah, and, he was probably put in a bad situation when he came here because, number one, I mean, he had surgery right after he was signed, so that's not a good spot to be in. But also, when they did sign him, there wasn't Dalvin Cook at that time. And then all of a sudden they draft the guy that really is going to be their featured back. And, Murray kind of came in with the expectation that he would be. So if I had to guess, I would say he ends up back in a reduced financially, a contract not as big as the one that he signed, because, if he starts looking around the league, he may find that, number one, we all know that running backs are being more devalued now than they used to be. But also, I think looking at what he's done in his 2 years with the Vikings, he's not that explosive breakaway running back. And his type of skills are solid. I agree with you that they used him the way that I think he should be used, but it's also not the type of back that's extremely difficult to find. I think the backs that are really good at everything, like as what I view Dalvin Cook being, are the more difficult to find. So he may go out and search the market, and maybe he will find a spot that gives him an opportunity for more carries, more playing time. But I think if he comes back here, he does have to realize it's probably more like a 75-25 split between him and Cook.
I'm going to also get into something unusual here, or a little off the beaten path. We're going to talk about Rhodes and Treadwell and some free agents, but like Thielen, you hear so often from athletes, "Oh, I knew you guys would love it." I don't love it that Cousins and Thielen got into the sideline. I didn't hope for that. The perception that media loves dysfunction is completely incorrect. Most people in this town want, actually kind of unjournalistically cheer for the local team, even though they probably shouldn't be. I got into the business to cover good teams. I think that's the most fascinating thing about sports writing is being close to a good team and seeing why things work and how things work. But when something like that happens, it would be completely irresponsible to not ask questions about it and not delve into it. Because most of the time we spend interviewing players, it's just happy talk. It's just it's the player trying to get through an interview without saying anything he's going to regret. And it's a lot of, let's face it, a large portion of the media is just looking for a sound bite they can take back to the station. It's not in depth. It's not incisive. It's not even interesting. So when something real like that happens, you have to ask questions about it. It's not that we loved it. I just think you have to do your job and ask questions about it.
Well, I agree with that. But to me, because of the way things had gone the previous almost 2 months, Thielen started the season with 8 straight 100-yard games, and he had 1, I think, in the final 8 games. So you could see some frustrations, and that wasn't the start of it. There were other times where he was caught on camera saying, this is open all day. I think there became more of a frustration with Thielen with Cousins. And
yes,
feeling like there were times that Thielen should have been gone to. And when you look at the film, there are times that I think he had Thielen and went other places with it. Now, that said, you look at it, Kyle Rudolph wasn't happy with his role at about mid-season. He was talking to Zimmer about wanting to be more involved. Dalvin Cook has to be a big part of this. Diggs has to be a big part of it. So, they need to use everyone, but I do think that with what Thielen gave them in the first half of the season, they didn't use him enough in the second half of the season. So I understand his frustration, and I like it when players show emotion like that they care, and I don't know that there's anybody that is a bigger competitor on the team than Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I agree with all that as well. All right, Xavier Rhodes, I thought one of the most interesting moments of the season was when Rhodes came off the field in Detroit, and we asked about the injury after the game, and Zimmer said, that's just Xavier. It was pointed whether he wanted it to be or not. Rhodes didn't have a great season, and he wasn't that healthy.
Yeah, and that was the second time, actually, that Zimmer had said that about that's just Xavier. He said it several weeks earlier when there was another type of deal where you thought it was going to be a serious injury and he's back in there playing. But Rhodes, said on Monday, this was clearly his most disappointing season. I went back and I took a look at all the injury reports, and there were about 5 different things that guy was dealing with this year, whether it was foot, groin, hamstring. I don't remember what else. He had a lot of nagging injuries, and I think that clearly affected him during the season and throughout. I found it interesting, his reasoning for not playing in the final game was he said, I didn't want to go out there and feeling like I wouldn't be able to make it through the game. And then we have to, have somebody else that's inactive, and maybe that's hurting our defensive back depth. But, man, they were really getting down there. At one point, they had Jaron Curse on the outside because guys were so dinged up during the game. So it does kind of go back to Zimmer's, contention that you can never have enough good cornerbacks. But I see this as one of those deals. It seems like a lot of seasons you get one position group that's dealing with a lot of injuries. In 2016, it was offensive line. And this year, cornerback especially, defensive back in general, had a number of injuries. But, there's no way that you are going to say, Xavier Rhodes is soft. I think he may be getting injured a little bit more. Maybe he looks at his routine and, he admitted he might overdo it a bit, which I think is a possibility. And I also think it's something that Zimmer has looked at in the past year or two. As he gets toward the end of the season, he does change the schedule around and tries to take it easier on players. So I think he's learned as a head coach. I think Rhodes is learning as a player that, not overdoing things is is a wise move as you move into the second half of the season.
Yeah, no question. Treadwell thinks he had a decent season. This scares me.
Well, that's, if Zimmer's going to say that's Xavier, I'm going to say that's Treadwell. Yeah. I mean, he can be what I would say is a little bit delusional. Here's his exact quote. He was asked about his season. I wouldn't say it was up and down. I had a couple drops, but overall I had a great year, and this team had a great year. I played my role and did what I needed to do to help the team win. Well, he didn't have a great year. He didn't have a good year. It was a career year for him, but that's more telling of what his first 2 years were like than saying that he was really good this year. Look, he's got one more year left on his contract, and I think they keep him around, but I think that's going to be it for him unless he has a dramatic turnaround that I don't see coming, because I feel like he, for the past couple of years, has been doesn't have a realistic perception of what he can be, what he should be. We know about his work ethic and how, even Zimmer said he's overdoing it a couple of training camps ago, but that's not necessarily the complete answer of what needs to happen for him to be a legitimate receiver. I tend to think that he just does not have the ability to separate, and ultimately that's going to be the telling part of his career.
Yep. Let's buzz through some free agent possibilities. Once again, please, if you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach me at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. This is usually the most popular show on a network that had about 180,000 listens last month. Download before you listen. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. And thanks to Twill, Bite Squad, Mississippi Pub, Beaver Island Brewing, Fixology Repair, and Tony Hoagland. So Sheldon Richardson, you think he's back?
I think between him and Barr, they're going to have to make a decision. And if I had to guess, I would say that it would be Barr that's back because of his longer history with Zimmer and being, a bit more versatile. Look, I don't think Barr had a good final game, but I think before that he had a really good 3 or 4 games. And I think that him flashing that good month shows Zimmer what he can be. I think it hurt a lot more than people probably realize not having Eric Kendricks in that final game, and Barr had to take on more blocking and trying to stop the run. Whereas, I think Kendricks is better at getting off blocks. I think Barr is better at really running to the ball and making plays when he isn't accounted for as much in run blocking. So if they have to choose between the two, my guess is they lean toward Anthony Barr.
We already talked about Latavius Murray. How about Tom Johnson? He always gives them, good quality depth, but is the match there? Is the money match there? What he wants and what the team's willing to give?
Well, I tend to think that he is starting to realize he's never going to be this really highly paid 3 technique guy. And if Sheldon Richardson isn't back, then I definitely think Tom Johnson's back. If Richardson's back, then maybe they start to look at a mid-round draft pick that they can develop behind Richardson. So I think his status is somewhat dependent on if Richardson's back.
That the Vikings are going to spend their first draft pick on a defensive player, so it could be a mid first round pick. I think we know Compton's probably gone unless he just stays 6th round low price depth. How about Easton? He's an interesting guy. They thought he was good enough to start, but now they have to decide whether to sign him after being injured.
Yeah, and to me that is the key. If they believe that he's going to be fully healthy and this isn't something that is going to be a recurrence, then I think they probably re-sign him, which is, in my opinion, a good move. But I wouldn't necessarily count on him either being a starter if he's back. I think he needs to be challenged for that starting spot if he's back. But it would certainly help their guard situation if they get him re-signed.
Trevor Siemian, I thought he had a great season, 0 interceptions. I'm sure he's back.
I think it's getting to be that time where they need to decide if Kyle Sloter has developed enough to be the number 2 guy. And based off of what I saw in training camp from both Sloter and Simeon,